The laugh didn't belong in a courtroom. It wasn't nervous. It wasn't accidental. It was the kind of laugh people use when they think rules are for other people. "I'm not your defendant," the man announced, palm raised like a traffic cop. "I am a sovereign citizen. This court has zero jurisdiction over me." A few heads in the gallery turned at the same time. Somebody whispered, "Here we go." The bailiff's posture tightened, subtle, trained, ready. Judge Halpern didn't react with anger. She didn't give him the satisfaction. She simply set her pen down, slow and neat, like she'd just closed a file labeled delusion. "Sir," she said, voice calm as polished stone, "I don't need your consent to enforce the law. I need you to answer questions." The man, Darren Pike, late 30s, shaved head, crisp button down that looked new, smirked harder. As if calm authority was proof he was winning. "I don't answer to corporate courts," Darren said loudly. "I'm here under duress. And for the record, I'm making a special appearance only." Judge Halpern leaned back half an inch. "For the record, you're making a special fool of yourself. Sit down and listen." A ripple ran through the gallery, half shock, half satisfaction. Darren's smirk faltered, then returned, thinner now. At the plaintiff's table, a woman in a paint-stained hoodie clutched an invoice folder like it was the last solid thing in her world. Mid-40s, tired eyes, the kind of posture you get after too many jobs done and too many checks coming next week. Judge Halpern glanced at the case file. "Ms. Ortega, you're suing Mr. Pike for $3,400. Basement water damage repair." "Yes, Your Honor," the woman said, voice firm but strained. "I did the work." He inspected it. He thanked me. Then he refused to pay. Darren scoffed, loud enough to be heard on the microphones. "I didn't refuse. There was no contract with me. There was a contract with a corporate fiction." Judge Halpern didn't even look at him yet. She looked at Ms. Ortega. "Tell me what happened." "Start at the beginning." Ms. Ortega took a breath. "He contacted me through my business page. Said his basement flooded. We agreed on a price. I texted him the estimate. He replied, approved. I came with my crew. We removed damaged drywall, treated mold, replaced insulation, sealed the wall, repainted. 3 days. Then I invoiced him, and then..." Judge Halpern asked. Ms. Ortega's fingers tightened on the folder. He said I needed to address the invoice to his living man and not to the name on his ID. Then he started sending me links, videos. He said money is admiralty. Fraud. I thought he was joking. Darren leaned forward, excited by his own nonsense. "It's not a joke, it's law. Common law. Natural law. She doesn't have standing." "Sir," Judge Halpern cut in. "First warning, if you interrupt again, you can explain yourself from the hallway." Darren sat back, eyes narrowed. But he couldn't hide the thrill of being the loudest person in the room. "Judge." Halpern turned to Ms. Ortega. "Did he ever complain about the quality of the work?" "No," Ms. Ortega said. "Not once. He only complained when the invoice showed up." Judge Halpern nodded slowly, like she'd heard this song before. She turned a page. "Do you have the texts?" Ms. Ortega slid them forward. The bailiff carried them up. Judge Halpern scanned, then read one out loud. "Looks great. Thank you for getting it done fast." She looked up at Darren. "That's you?" Darren's jaw twitched. "That's my device." "That's not me consenting to commerce." The gallery made an involuntary sound, disbelief, irritation. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." Judge Halpern's eyes sharpened. "You thanked her for the work?" "I thanked the service," Darren said, now warming up like a man about to perform. "But the invoice is unlawful. She needs to bill my estate entity." "She didn't. That's her mistake." Judge Halpern let a beat of silence stretch long enough for Darren to start feeling it. "Mr. Pike," she said calm, "this is not a philosophy seminar. You hired a contractor. You received work. You owe money." "I do not consent," Darren said again, like he thought repeating it made it true. Judge Halpern's mouth tightened slightly. "And I do not consent to stupidity. Yet here we are together." A small burst of laughter escaped the gallery. Darren's ears went red. Judge Halpern held up the invoice. "Ms. Ortega, do you have photos of the work?" Before and after? Yes. Ms. Ortega's voice steadied as she handed over printed photos, flooded drywall, peeled paint, then clean sealed walls, bright and finished. Judge Halpern studied them. This looks like completed work. It's cosmetic, Darren snapped. You can't prove she used lawful materials. Judge Halpern looked up slowly. Lawful materials? Darren nodded aggressively, sensing momentum. Exactly. Under Yuxik's stop. Judge Halpern's voice didn't rise, but the word hit like a gavel. I'm going to ask you a simple question, Mr. Pike. Darren squared his shoulders, ready for battle. Did you pay her? Judge Halpern asked. Yes or no? Darren paused. His eyes flicked to the gallery, then back. No, because I didn't have to. Judge Halpern nodded once. Good. At least you're honest about that part. She flipped another page. Now here's where your little performance runs into a wall. You told the court you reject jurisdiction? Correct, Darren said loudly. Judge Halpern lifted a document. Then explain this. She held it up so the camera and Darren could see it clearly. 2 months ago, Judge Halpern said, you filed a small claims case in the same court against a towing company. The room shifted. Even Ms. Ortega's eyes widened. Darren's face tightened like someone pulled a string behind his jaw. That's irrelevant. It's not irrelevant, Judge Halpern replied, voice cool. Because when you wanted money, you were perfectly happy to use this corporate court. When someone wants money from you, suddenly you're a sovereign citizen. Darren's mouth opened, then closed. He tried to recover with speed. That case was filed by my representative entity. Judge Halpern cut in, faster. Your representative entity used your driver's license number and your home address. Try again. The gallery leaned forward. The bailiff shifted closer, not threatening, just prepared. Miss Ortega whispered, almost to herself, oh wow. Judge Halpern's eyes stayed on Darren. Mr. Pike, you don't get to treat the legal system like a vending machine. Put in a complaint, get a result, then kick the machine when it asks for payment. Darren's confidence wobbled, but he shoved it upright with anger. This is discrimination. You're targeting me because I know my rights. Judge Halpern didn't blink. You don't know your rights? You know slogans? She looked down at the file again, then back up. Ms. Ortega says you refused to pay and then flooded her with pseudo-legal documents. Do you have those documents, Ms. Ortega? Ms. Ortega nodded and slid a stack forward. Printed emails, affidavits, bizarre stamps, long paragraphs in all caps. Judge Halpern flipped through them with visible impatience. This is copy and paste nonsense. It's lawful notice, Darren insisted. And she defaulted by not responding. Judge Halpern looked up. Default happens in court, not in your inbox. Darren's smile returned tight, desperate. Fine, then I'll show you the proof you haven't seen. He reached into his pocket. The bailiff's hand moved a fraction, trained. Cautioned. Darren pulled out a black thumb drive and held it up like a trophy. I recorded everything, he said, voice rising with renewed swagger. Every conversation, every agreement. Proof she's lying. Ms. Ortega's face tightened with dread. What is he talking about? Judge Halpern didn't flinch. Hand it to the bailiff. Darren hesitated just a heartbeat too long, then placed it in the bailiff's palm. Judge Halpern's eyes stayed locked on Darren as the clerk plugged the drive into the court computer. Darren stood taller, savoring the attention again. You'll see. She manipulated. The clerk's fingers stopped mid-movement. A freeze. A frown. A quick glance at Judge Halpern. Judge Halpern noticed instantly. Clerk? Asterisk. The clerk leaned in and whispered something to the judge, too quiet for the microphones, but loud enough in Darren's face to drain the color from it. Judge Halpern's expression didn't explode. It changed temperature. She straightened, eyes narrowing with surgical focus. Mr. Pike, she said quietly. That's not evidence. Darren swallowed. What do you mean? Judge Halpern's voice stayed calm, which made it worse. I mean, you just brought me something that could turn this from a simple unpaid invoice into a much bigger problem. And Darren, who had been grinning 10 seconds ago, suddenly looked like a man who realized the room had doors he didn't know were locked. Darren blinked hard, like he could reset the moment. What do you mean it's not evidence? He demanded. The swagger in his voice was still there, but it had started to thin like paint stretched too far. Judge Halpern didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. I mean, Mr. Pike, the clerk just informed me your proof has problems before we even open a file. Darren scoffed, but it came out strained. That's ridiculous. It's video. Video doesn't lie. Judge Halpern looked straight at him. People lie with video every day. She turned slightly toward the clerk. Put the file list on the monitor. The overhead screen lit up in cold blue. A directory appeared, neat file names. Too neat, like someone had tried to make them look official .basement_call_1.mp4. Agreement_audio.watega_admission.mov*. Darren's mouth tugged upward again. Trying to resurrect that smirk. See? It's all there. Judge Halpern didn't comment on the file names. She pointed at the right side of the screen. Now expand the details column. The clerk clicked. A new set of fields appeared: creation date, modification date, software info. The kind of information most people forget exists. Judge Halpern leaned forward slightly. Read the creation date on Ortega_emission.mov. The clerk swallowed. Created. Last Tuesday. 3:12 p.m. Ms. Ortega's head snapped up. Last Tuesday? I haven't spoken to him since 2 months ago. Darren stiffened. That's just when it was copied. Judge Halpern's eyes stayed fixed on the screen. Creation date, Mr. Pike, not copy date. Darren's lips parted, then closed again. You can't prove that. Computers are wrong all the time. Judge Halpern tilted her head. Computers are rarely wrong about their own fingerprints. She nodded at the clerk. Software used? The clerk clicked again. It says, Clipforge Pro, editor profile name, DePike. The gallery reacted instantly. Quiet noise, shifting, the sound people make when they can smell the lye burning. Darren's face drained of color and then flooded back red. That's not me. Judge Halpern didn't look impressed. DePike is not you. No, Darren snapped. That could be anybody. Someone hacked me. Judge Halpern leaned back, calm as a closed door. You expect me to believe you were hacked? The hacker created video files, edited them in a program on your computer, and then conveniently packaged them on a thumb drive you brought to court? Darren's eyes darted gallery. Bailiff, plaintiff searching for one sympathetic face. He found none. Miss Ortega's voice cracked with disbelief. You made fake videos? I didn't, Darren barked, too fast. She's scamming me and you're all falling for it? Judge Halpern's gaze sharpened. Mr. Pike, stop. You're not the director here. Sit still. Then she turned to the clerk. Open the file. Not to play it. Just open it. The clerk double-clicked. A video preview popped up. A paused frame. Ms. Ortega's face frozen mid-sentence. But something about it felt wrong, too clean, too staged. Too perfectly lit for a recorded phone call. Darren claimed he captured in chaos. Judge Halpern's eyes narrowed. Play 5 seconds. The audio came through tinny, clipped. I admit the invoice was exaggerated. Ms. Ortega flinched like she'd been slapped. I never said that. I would never say that. Darren pounced on the moment. There, she's lying right now. That's her voice. Judge Halpern didn't react to Darren's volume. She watched the waveform on the screen. Pause, she said. The clerk paused. Judge Halpern leaned in. Why is there a hard audio cut right there? The clerk hovered the cursor. There's a transition marker. Judge Halpern's eyes flicked to Darren. Like an edit? Darren stuttered. Or the recording glitched. Judge Halpern's voice stayed even. Your recording glitched and then repaired itself neatly with a transition marker. Amazing. A low murmur of disgust rolled through the gallery. Ms. Ortega's hands began to shake, not just from anger hurt. Because it wasn't only about money now. It was about being framed on camera. Her reputation turned into a prop. Judge Halpern looked at Ms. Ortega, her tone softening slightly. Ms. Ortega, did you ever say anything resembling that sentence? No, Your Honor, she said, swallowing hard. No, Judge Halpern nodded once. I believe you, Darren snapped. Of course you do. Judge Halpern's gaze whipped back to him. Because you just handed me a drive full of edited content and called it truth. That tends to damage credibility. Darren's jaw clenched. I have the right to defend myself. You have the right to defend yourself with facts, Judge Halpern corrected. You do not have the right to manufacture evidence. She turned to the clerk. Check the other files. Modification dates. The clerk clicked through. One by one, the dates stacked up like a countdown, everything created within days, modified within minutes of each other, packaged like a set. Darren's breathing got shallow. You're misunderstanding technology. Judge Halpern's face stayed unreadable. Technology is not the one misunderstanding here? Then the clerk hesitated again longer this time. Eyes narrowing at something on the screen, Judge Halpern noticed immediately. What? The clerk's voice lowered. There's a folder here that's not labeled with this case. Judge Halpern's eyes sharpened. Open it. Darren's head snapped up. No, that's private. Judge Halpern didn't blink. You introduced the drive into evidence. It is no longer private. The clerk opened the folder. A list of names appeared. Not file names, people's names. With amounts next to them. J. Rivera minus 2100 S. Tallman 4. 650E HOLT 1980M. Ortega. 3400 megaseconds. Ortega's stomach dropped. What is that? The gallery leaned forward, hungry now not for drama, but for the truth finally showing its teeth. Judge Halpern's voice went colder. Mr. Pike, why is there a spreadsheet on your thumb drive that looks like a list of unpaid balances to multiple contractors? Darren's lips parted. Nothing came out. Judge Halpern tapped the screen with her pen. And why are there columns labeled stall tactic, paper packet, and threat angle? Miss Ortega stared, horrified. Threat angle? Darren's face twisted. That's not what you think. Judge Halpern leaned forward. Tell me what it is then. Darren's voice cracked, trying to sound offended instead of exposed. It's notes. For negotiating. Negotiating, Judge Halpern repeated, slow. By listing a threat angle, the bailiff took one step closer, not aggressive, just present. Darren noticed and swallowed. Judge Halpern looked at Ms. Ortega. This is why he's doing the sovereign citizen routine. It's not belief. It's a system. Darren slammed his hand on the podium. I don't have to stand here and be attacked. Judge Halpern's eyes flashed. Yes, you do. Because you came here to avoid paying a debt, and you attempted to deceive the court. Ms. Ortega's voice shook with anger now. You do this to people for a living. Darren whipped toward her. You're not a victim. You people overcharge and think you can bully homeowners? Judge Halpern cut in like a blade. Enough. She turned back to the clerk. Print that spreadsheet. The printer whirred. Paper slid out, real physical proof. Darren's breathing sounded too loud in the silence. Judge. Halpern lifted the freshly printed page and looked straight at Darren. Double quotes, Mr. Pike, she said. Dangerously calm. You've now given me 3 separate issues. 1. You admit you didn't pay for work you approved. 2. You attempted to avoid jurisdiction while previously using this court. And 3. You presented edited material as evidence and brought a document that appears to outline a repeat strategy against other contractors. Darren shook his head, voice desperate. You're twisting it. You're twisting all of it. Judge Halpern's tone didn't change. No one is twisting anything. You twisted the video. A ripple of stunned laughter broke out and died quickly. Darren's eyes went wild. So what, you're just going to railroad me because some lady brought an invoice? Judge Halpern leaned back, then glanced at the bailiff. Do we have today's witness list? The bailiff checked. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Halpern nodded. Bring in the next witness. Darren blinked. What witness? The side door opened. A woman stepped in wearing work boots and a denim jacket, holding a folder like she'd been waiting for this moment for a long time. She didn't look nervous. She looked done. Darren's face drained instantly. The woman's eyes locked on him. Steady and exhausted, Judge Halpern's voice sliced through the tension. "State your name for the record." The woman didn't glance at Darren again. "Tessa Rivera," she said. "He owes me $2,100. And I'm not the first." Darren's mouth opened, and the only thing that came out was a cracked whisper. "No, no, no. Because the Sovereign Citizen Act can survive ignorance. It can't survive a line of people with receipts. Asterisk Tessa." Rivera didn't walk in like someone chasing revenge. She walked in like someone who'd been forced to learn how to stand up straight while carrying a loss. Work boots, denim jacket, a folder so worn at the edges it looked like it had lived in the passenger seat for weeks. She stopped at the witness stand without looking at Darren twice. Judge Halpern's voice stayed even. "Ms. Rivera, you said he owes you $2,100. What was the job?" "Sump pump replacement and drain line repair," Tessa said. "His basement flooded again. He wanted it done same day because he had a party coming. I worked until 10 at night." Darren's laugh tried to come back, but it came out nervous. "That's her story." Judge Halpern didn't look at him. "Mr. Pike, you're not a narrator. Sit." Tessa opened her folder and pulled out a signed work order. "He signed this. He paid a deposit. The rest was due on completion." Judge Halpern held out her hand. The bailiff took the paper, passed it up. The judge scanned it once, then looked at Darren like she already knew what the next lie would be. "Signature matches your earlier court filing," Judge Halpern said. "So don't start with corporate fiction." Darren's jaw tightened. "I didn't sign under full disclosure." Judge Halpern's eyes narrowed. "You were fully disclosed to the fact that water was in your basement." A couple people in the gallery snorted. Darren's face went red. Judge Halpern turned back to Tessa after the job was done. "What happened?" Tessa's voice stayed controlled, but her hands betrayed her, one finger tapping the folder edge in a rhythm of frustration. "He texted me, looks good, then I sent the invoice. And he started doing whatever this is." She gestured toward Darren's earlier performance without even saying "sovereign citizen," like the words weren't worth air. "He said I had to invoice the estate and the living man doesn't do commerce." Judge Halpern nodded slowly. "Same nonsense. Same script." Darren leaned forward, trying to sound superior. "It's not nonsense. It's law." Judge Halpern's gaze cut to him. "You want law? Here's law. You accepted services. Pay for them." Tessa continued. "He also sent me a notice in all caps. Told me if I contacted him again, he'd file something against my business license." Ms. Ortega's eyes widened. "He threatened you too?" Tessa nodded once, and that nod carried the weight of every contractor who's been treated like disposable labor. "He tried. But I've been doing this long enough to know when someone's bluffing." Judge Halpern leaned forward. "Do you have the text?" Tessa slid out printed screenshots. The bailiff brought them up. Judge Halpern read aloud without embellishment. "If you persist, I will file administrative complaints and lean your company into the ground." The gallery made that uncomfortable sound. Again, people realizing this wasn't a one-off dispute. This was a method. Judge Halpern looked at Darren. "Did you send that?" Darren opened his mouth, then tried to pivot. "Even if I did, it's protected speech." Judge Halpern's expression didn't change. Threatening false complaints to avoid payment is not speech, it's coercion. Tessa's voice lowered, and for the first time, emotion crept through her calm. "Your Honor, I'm not some big corporation. I'm a small business. I have 2 techs. I pay them whether clients pay me or not. He knows that." Judge Halpern looked at her. "How do you know he knows that?" Tessa's eyes flicked to Darren, then away. "Because I told him. When he started stalling, I said, 'I need this money to cover payroll,' and he wrote back." She swallowed once, jaw tight. He wrote back, "That sounds like a you problem." A hush rolled through the courtroom. Even the bailiff's face hardened slightly, that neutral mask tightening. Judge Halpern turned to Darren. "You wrote that." Darren tried to laugh it off. "People say things." Judge Halpern leaned back. People who pay their bills don't. She placed the text down with deliberate care and looked at the clerk. Pull up the spreadsheet again. The screen returned. Names, amounts, and those columns that made the room feel cold or stall tactic. Paper packet, threat angle. Judge Halpern tapped one line. Ms. Rivera, your name is on this list. J. Rivera minus 2,100. That's you. Tessa's face tightened. Yes. Judge Halpern's voice stayed calm, but it sharpened like a knife being set down. So he wasn't negotiating, he was tracking. Darren's eyes went wild. That list is fake. It could be planted. Judge Halpern didn't look at him. It's on your drive. With your editor profile name. Darren's breathing got louder. He was losing the room. And he knew it. Judge Halpern turned back to Tessa. Tell me about the paper packet. Did he send you documents? Tessa opened her folder again and pulled out a thick stack of ridiculous stamps. Pseudo-legal formatting, phrases like notice of default and non-consent affidavit. Judge Halpern took one glance and sighed like a person forced to read spam out loud. These are internet templates. Tessa nodded. He emailed them at midnight. Then he texted me the next morning. Did you get the packet? Like it was a weapon delivery. Darren stopped. That's my right. Judge Halpern's gaze snapped to him. You keep using the word right like it's a magic key. It's not. Then she turned to Ms. Ortega. Ms. Ortega, does this look familiar? Ms. Ortega stared at the stack. It's the same wording. Same weird sentences. Judge Halpern nodded once. Because it's a system. Darren could feel it slipping, so he tried to widen the fight. This is a witch hunt. She brought in her friends. This is collusion. Tessa's head turned sharply. Friends? I've never met her in my life. Ms. Ortega nodded. I've never seen her before today. Judge Halpern leaned forward slightly, voice quiet but lethal. You see how you do that, Mr. Pike? When facts corner you, you invent a conspiracy. Darren's lips pressed thin. He looked at the bailiff like the bailiff might save him. The bailiff didn't blink. Judge Halpern addressed Tessa again. Ms. Rivera, you said you're not the first. Tessa's gaze stayed steady. I found out after the fact. I posted in a local contractor group just warning people. 2 guys messaged me. One said he'd done drywall for him. Never got paid. Another said he filed a case and Mr. Pike showed up and did this same act sovereign citizen. No jurisdiction until the contractor got tired and dropped it. Judge Halpern's eyes narrowed. Dropped it. Tessa nodded. Because people don't have time, Your Honor. We're working. We don't have time to chase money in court. Judge Halpern leaned back, absorbing the human math behind the scam, not just what he stole, but how he counted on exhaustion to protect him. Then she turned to Darren again. Mr. Pike, stand up. Darren stayed seated. I do not consent, stand up, Judge Halpern repeated, and her tone made the courtroom feel smaller. He stood slowly, chin high out of habit. Judge Halpern pointed at the screen. Explain to me why your spreadsheet has a column called threat angle. What threats? Darren's mouth opened. He tried to land on outrage. It's not threats, it's leverage. Judge Halpern didn't blink. Leverage against people you owe money to. Darren's face twitched. It's negotiation. Judge Halpern's voice dropped. No, negotiation is, I can't pay today. Can we do a plan? Your negotiation is, I will bury you in paperwork and false complaints until you give up. Darren swallowed. Judge Halpern nodded to the clerk. Open that folder labeled paper packet. Darren's head snapped around. No, those are templates private. Judge Halpern didn't even look at him. Open it. The clerk clicked. A list populated PDFs, doc files, pre-filled forms. Then the clerk's expression changed tight, unsettled. Judge Halpern saw it instantly. What? The clerk's voice went careful. There's a file named Ortega_lien_draft.pdf. Single quotes. Ms. Ortega's face went blank. Lien draft. Judge Halpern's eyes narrowed. Open it. Darren's voice cracked, suddenly loud. That's not filed. That's not anything. That's just the bailiff shifted closer again, a silent warning. Keep going, and you will lose more than the case. The PDF opened on the monitor dot. It was a completed template, Ms. Ortega's full name, her business address, even her home address typed in cleanly. A claim amount listed at the top. A line at the bottom for filing. Ms. Ortega's hand flew to her mouth. How does he have my home address? Darren blurted. It's public record. Judge Halpern's voice went ice cold. You prepared a retaliatory lien against the person you owe money to. Tessa whispered, furious and shaken. That's the threat angle. Judge Halpern stared at Darren for a long beat. Mr. Pike, you didn't just refuse to pay. You built a system designed to punish people for asking. Darren's shoulders rose and fell in shallow breaths. He looked less like a sovereign citizen now and more like a man, watching his own scheme unravel in real time. Judge Halpern leaned forward and spoke with precise clarity. Here's what's going to happen next. We are going to calculate damages, and we are going to discuss your attempted fabrication of evidence and your preparation of retaliatory filings. Darren's voice came out thin. You can't. Judge Halpern didn't let him finish. And then, she added, eyes locked on him. We're going to find out how. Many other names are on that list. Because the spreadsheet wasn't just a record dot, it was a map dot, and Judge Halpern had just decided she was going to follow it one name at a time. Asterisk Judge. Halpern didn't look at Darren when she said it. She looked at the screen. Clerk, print the full list, she ordered. Every name. Every amount. I want it in my hand. The printer started up again, that dry mechanical whir that suddenly felt like a countdown. Darren stood rigid at the podium, breathing through his nose like he could will the paper to jam. This is insane, he snapped. You're expanding the case beyond what? Judge Halpern cut in. Beyond the evidence you brought into my courtroom? Sit down. I'm not sitting. The bailiff stepped half a pace closer, no aggression, just presence. Darren sat. Miss Ortega watched him with a kind of disbelief that had finally hardened into anger. So I'm not special, she whispered, voice shaking. You do this to everybody. Tessa didn't even look at Darren now. She looked at Judge Halpern. That's what I'm saying. He counts on us being too busy to fight. Asterisk. Judge Halpern nodded once. And he miscalculated today. She picked up Ms. Ortega's invoice again. Ms. Ortega, your claim is $3,400. Do you have proof of completion and acceptance? Yes, Your Honor, Ms. Ortega said, sliding forward the signed estimate, the approved text message, and the photo set. Judge Halpern flipped through them with quick precision. Work performed, materials included, no dispute until the bill. Mr. Pike, do you have any legitimate defense, meaning a defense that exists outside of internet forums? Darren leaned forward, jaw tight. I dispute the contract. There was no meeting of the minds. She didn't disclose the corporate nature of her business. Judge Halpern held up a hand. Stop. You don't get to hire a plumber, thank the plumber, then claim you didn't meet minds because you watched a video at midnight. Darren's face went blotchy. So you're just going to ignore the law? No, Judge Halpern said. I'm going to apply the law. You're the one ignoring your obligations. She wrote on her pad, then looked up. Judgment for Ms. Ortega, $3,400 plus filing fees. And I'm granting her request for court costs related to the charge she paid for certified demand letters. Asterisk. Darren's head snapped up. What demand letters? Ms. Ortega's voice rose, hurt turning to heat. I sent 2, certified. You refused them. Judge Halpern's gaze pinned Darren. You refused delivery? Darren tried to shrug like it was clever. I don't accept mail under. Stop talking, Judge Halpern said, flat. You accepted drywall. You can accept mail. The gallery let out a low sound, satisfaction, disbelief, relief, all tangled. Judge Halpern turned to the bailiff. Now I want that drive secured. He tried to introduce it as evidence. It stays with the court for the duration of this hearing. Darren's posture changed. A twitch in his shoulders. A flicker in his eyes, like the thought of losing control of that drive, scared him more than losing the case. That's my property. Darren snapped. It's evidence, Judge Halpern replied. And right now, it's also a roadmap of what you've been doing. The printer spat out the spreadsheet pages. The clerk handed them up. Judge Halpern scanned them in silence, then stopped at a line near the bottom. She looked up at Darren. I count 9 names on this list. Darren's voice came out too fast. That proves nothing. Judge Halpern tapped the paper. 9 names. 9 alleged balances. And columns labeled stall tactic, paper packet, and thread angle. That proves planning. Darren leaned back, trying to act bored. Those are notes. People keep notes. Judge Halpern nodded slightly. Then we're going to read your notes. She nodded to the clerk. Open the folder again. Search lien. Darren's head snapped. No, you already, the clerk typed. The results populated .lien_draft_ortega.pdf, lien_draft_rivera.pdf, lien_draft_tallman.pdf, lien_draft_hold.pdf. Ms. Ortega's mouth fell open. Tessa's face tightened, furious. You drafted one for me too? Darren's voice cracked. Those are templates. Judge Halpern's eyes narrowed. Templates with their names and addresses filled in. She leaned forward, voice dropping. Mr. Pike, filing false liens is not a negotiation tool. It's a weapon. And courts take it seriously. Darren's chest rose and fell. I didn't file them. Judge Halpern didn't blink. You prepared them? She turned slightly to Ms. Ortega. Ms. Ortega, did he ever ask you for personal information beyond what a normal contractor needs? Ms. Ortega hesitated, then nodded. He asked for my business tax form. Of U9. He said the house was a rental and he needed it for accounting. Darren flinched. Judge Halpern's eyes sharpened immediately. You gave him a U9? Yes, Ms. Ortega said, voice small now. Just my IN business address. Judge Halpern turned back to the clerk. Search W9, the clerk typed. A folder appeared. W9's. Darren stood up so fast his chair scraped. No, that's private financial information. You can't. The bailiff stepped in closer firm. Darren froze mid-step. Judge Halpern's tone went ice cold. Sit down. You brought the drive. You don't get to scream privacy now? The clerk opened the folder. Inside were scanned documents, W9 forms, IDs, address confirmations. More than one. Tessa's eyes widened. Why would you have my ID? Judge Halpern's voice was controlled, but it carried an edge that changed the air in the room. Mr. Pike, why do you have multiple contractors' tax documents stored together with lien drafts? Darren's mouth worked, but no sound came out. Judge Halpern stared at him. Answer. Darren swallowed. For record keeping. For record keeping, Judge Halpern repeated, unimpressed. While you don't pay them. Then the clerk hesitated again, eyes narrowing at the file list. Your Honor, there's another folder. IRS. Ms. Ortega's face strained. IRS? Darren's voice jumped. Those are old. Judge Halpern didn't look away from the monitor. Open it. The clerk clicked. PDFs appeared with clean names that made Ms. Ortega's stomach turn before a single page. Open :1099_Ortega_225.pdf. 1099_Rivera_225.pdf. 1099_Tallman_225.pdf. Tessa whispered, horrified. Oh my God. Judge Halpern's eyes narrowed. Open Ortega. The PDF displayed a 1099 form amount paid. $14, 800. Ms. Ortega made a sound like her breath got stolen. He didn't pay me anything. How can he? Judge Halpern's gaze snapped to Darren. You prepared false tax forms for people you didn't pay. Darren shook his head violently. No, those aren't filed. They're drafts. Judge Halpern's voice sharpened. Drafts for what? To scare them into shutting up. Darren's face was slick with panic now. The sovereign citizen act fully dead. You don't understand. I'm protecting myself. Contractors threaten homeowners. They stop, Judge Halpern said, and the word hit so hard Darren went silent instantly. You are not protecting yourself. You are retaliating. She turned to the clerk. Scroll the document properties, metadata. The clerk opened the file details. A last modified date appeared 2 nights ago. Judge Halpern looked back to Darren. 2 nights ago. That's not old, that's active. The gallery was dead quiet now, not entertained, any more disgusted. Judge Halpern leaned forward, voice low and absolute. Mr. Pike, you attempted to falsify video evidence, drafted retaliatory liens, and prepared false IRS forms. That is not small claims misbehavior. That is a pattern of coercion. Darren's eyes darted toward the door like he was calculating distance. The bailiff's stance shifted subtle. Ready. Judge Halpern turned to Ms. Ortega, tone softening just enough to be human. Ms. Ortega, I'm sorry you're sitting here hearing this. But I want you to understand something. You were not targeted because you did anything wrong. You were targeted because he thought you'd give up. Ms. Ortega swallowed hard, eyes wet. I almost did. Judge Halpern nodded once. Not today. Then the clerk spoke again, quieter now, uneasy. Your Honor, there's one more PDF that's not about contractors. Judge Halpern's eyes narrowed. What is it? The clerk read the file name slowly. Probation _check-in _schedule.pdf. Darren went still like his blood turned cold. Judge Halpern didn't move for a full beat. Then she looked at Darren with a calm expression that felt like a trap closing. Mr. Pike, she said softly, are you currently on probation? Darren swallowed. No, Judge Halpern held his stare. That was a quick lie. She nodded at the clerk. Open it. The PDF filled the screen. State of Department of Corrections. Name, Darren Pike. Offense category, fraud-related. Restitution balance still owed. The room didn't gasp. It just dropped. Judge Halpern looked at Darren as if she'd finally found the engine behind the whole scheme. Bailiff, she said, still calm. I want a call placed to the probation office listed on that form. Right now. Darren's voice came out thin, desperate. You can't do that. Judge Halpern didn't blink. You should have thought of that before you walked in here with a thumb drive full of your own blueprint. And as the bailiff stepped away to make the call, Darren finally understood what sovereign citizens never plan for. It's easy to shout no jurisdiction at a bill. It's harder to shout it at a history you accidentally brought with you. Asterisk, the bailiff didn't make the call like it was routine. He stepped to the side. Voice low, one hand covering the receiver. Eyes never leaving Darren for more than a second at a time. Darren sat rigid at the table, pretending he wasn't listening, but his knee bounced so fast it was practically a confession. Judge Halpern didn't fill the silence. She just organized the papers, invoice, text, the printed spreadsheet, the open 1099 on the monitor, stacking them like bricks. Darren tried to talk anyway. This is all irrelevant to a civil claim. You're violating my rights. Judge Halpern looked up. Stop. He kept going, because men like Darren only feel alive when they're resisting. You can't call my probation officer because you think you found something on a... Stop, Judge Halpern repeated. Voice sharper. Darren's eyes darted to the bailiff, then to the door, then back to the bench. The Sovereign Citizen Act was gone now. What was left was a man realizing his mouth had finally talked him into a corner. The bailiff returned, face neutral but set. Judge Halpern didn't ask loudly. She didn't need to. Well, the bailiff spoke in a controlled tone, meant for the record. Yes, Your Honor. Darren Pike is currently on active probation. The officer confirmed the document is current. Darren shot to his feet. That's a misunderstanding. I'm not. The bailiff didn't move toward him, but his stance changed, planted. Ready. Judge Halpern's gaze stayed on Darren like a lock clicking shut. Sit down. Darren didn't sit. He hovered, breathing hard, eyes wide with a kind of panic that makes people irrational. Judge Halpern continued calmly, as if she were discussing postage. Did the officer say anything else? The bailiff nodded. Yes, Your Honor. He stated Mr. Pike missed a check-in last month, and there's a violation review pending. He also requested copies of the documents on that thumb drive. Darren's voice cracked. You can't just hand my files over. Judge Halpern didn't flinch. You brought them into court. You introduced them. You tried to use them? You don't get to claim ownership now like it's a shield. Ms. Ortega sat very still, eyes wet but focused. Tessa's jaw was clenched so tight it looked painful. The gallery wasn't entertained anymore. They were watching something ugly finally get named. Judge Halpern's tone shifted, still calm, but heavier. Mr. Pike, let me explain something you clearly don't understand. This started as a simple dispute. You hired a contractor. You accepted the work. You refused to pay. Darren tried to interrupt again, but the judge didn't even look at him. Asterisk. It is now, Judge Halpern continued, a documented pattern of coercion. She lifted the printed spreadsheet. You kept a list of unpaid contractors. You wrote down your stall tactics. You drafted false liens. You stored 9 South NIDs. And you created false 1099s indicating you paid money you did not pay. Darren's voice turned defensive, desperate. They were drafts. Drafts aren't crimes. Judge Halpern's eyes finally met his. Drafts are intent. A long dead silence followed that sentence because everyone understood it. Darren understood it too. He took a step back from the table, as if he could physically distance himself from the screen. This is a setup, he said, weaker now. They're ganging up on me. Judge Halpern's response was simple. No one ganged up on you. You documented yourself. Darren's eyes flashed, and for a split second his old instinct returned. Attack, deny, dominate. He leaned forward. Fine. If you're doing this, then I'm done. I'm leaving. He turned sharply toward the aisle. The bailiff moved fast, controlled, stepping into Darren's path without touching him. Just blocking. A human wall. Darren's breath hitched. You can't detain me. Judge Halpern's voice didn't rise. You can leave when I release you. Sit down. Darren's chest rose and fell like he was fighting an invisible rope. He looked around, calculating, and then he did the only thing he thought might restore power. He pointed at Ms. Ortega. You people are scammers. You overcharge. You trap homeowners. You deserve enough, Judge Halpern said, and the word landed so hard, Darren stopped mid-sentence like his brain lost signal. Judge Halpern leaned forward slightly. That's your pattern too. When you owe, you attack the character of the person you owe. Ms. Ortega's voice finally broke through, trembling but clear. I have 2 kids. I worked 3 days in his basement. I didn't trap him. He begged me to come fast. Judge Halpern nodded without looking away from Darren. And he thanked you in writing. Darren's lips trembled. He looked like he wanted to speak and couldn't decide which lie would survive longest. Judge Halpern picked up her pen again, the way a surgeon picks up a tool. Here's my ruling. Darren's eyes widened, as if he still believed he could talk his way out. Judgment for Ms. Ortega, Judge Halpern said, in the amount of $3,400 plus filing fees and documented costs of certified demand letters. Total to be entered by the clerk today. Ms. Ortega's shoulders dropped tiny, almost invisible relief like her body had been bracing for months. Judge Halpern continued. Additionally, given the evidence of fabricated video content submitted to this court, the retaliatory lien drafts, and the false tax forms, I am issuing a referral. Darren leaned forward, voice cracking. Referral to who? Judge Halpern's eyes stayed cold. Appropriate authorities. And I am ordering that a complete copy of the thumb drive contents relevant to this matter be preserved and provided to your probation officer upon request. Darren swallowed hard. You're ruining my life. Judge Halpern's response was flat, unmovable. No, your choices did that. I'm just not ignoring it. She turned to Tessa. Ms. Rivera, you are not a party to this case today, but your testimony is noted. If you choose to file, you should bring the same documentation. Tessa nodded once, sharp. I will. Judge Halpern looked back at Darren. And one more thing. You will cease contacting Ms. Ortega outside of lawful communication regarding payment. No threats. No packets. No liens. If she receives anything resembling retaliation, she may return to this court without evidence. Darren's face twisted. This is tyranny. Judge Halpern didn't blink. This is accountability. The bailiff shifted slightly, listening to something through his earpiece. He leaned closer to the judge and spoke quietly. Judge Halpern's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened a fraction. She looked up at Darren. "Your probation officer is sending someone to meet you in the lobby." Darren froze, not in the theatrical way he'd frozen earlier when he was acting. In the real way, like his body understood consequences before his mouth could deny them. He tried one last move, voice suddenly softer, bargaining. "Judge, can we handle this civilly? I'll pay her. I'll pay everyone." "This doesn't need," Judge Halpern cut him off clean. "You had that option before you forged evidence and drafted fake federal tax forms." Darren's shoulders sagged. The fight leaked out of him. Judge Halpern glanced toward Ms. Ortega. Her tone softened for the first time in minutes. "Ms. Ortega, you did the right thing by coming here. People like him count on you giving up." Ms. Ortega nodded, wiping at one eye quickly like she hated being seen with tears. "Thank you, Your Honor." Judge Halpern nodded once. Then she looked at Darren again, final, professional, uncheckable. "You walked in here laughing," she said. "You walked in here thinking words like sovereign could erase debts. But the law doesn't care what you call yourself. It cares what you did." She set her pen down again. Same slow motion as the start, only now it felt like the end of a chapter Darren couldn't rewrite. "This court is adjourned." The gavel came down one clean strike dot as the room stood. Darren remained seated for a beat, staring at the tabletop like he expected a loophole to appear in the wood grain. It didn't. The bailiff stepped closer. "Sir, stand up." Darren stood, slower this time. No smirk left to put on, and as he was escorted toward the door, the gallery didn't clap. Didn't cheer. They just watched quietly because the scariest part wasn't that Darren lost Dot, it was how many times he'd gotten away with it before someone finally made him sit in. Front of truth, he couldn't outtalk.